Saving capitalism. That's the focus of tonight's angle. In the 1980s, it all seemed so simple and cool.
Greed, for lack of a better word, is good. Greed is right. Greed works. Greed clarifies, cuts through, and captures the essence of the evolutionary spirit.
Well, that movie came out in 1987, the same year that on October 19th, the stock market dropped, about 22% one day? Now, a few days before that, the Commerce Department had announced that the trade deficit in the United States was higher in August than expected. The dollar declined and interest rates rose. So what was the trade deficit in 1987? Well, in 1980, it was only $25.5 billion. But 7 years later, it had jumped to a staggering $159.5 billion. Okay, well, where did it stand at the end of 2024? The trade deficit stood at a jaw-dropping $1.2 trillion. Yeah, with, by the way, the largest deficit ever recorded with China at $295.4 billion, followed by the EU, Mexico, Vietnam, and Ireland. My friends, this is unsustainable. The shocking trade imbalance, which helped make Wall Street titans very wealthy, has also built Communist China's military into a true rival of the United States. It allowed China to invest heavily all across the globe in rare earth refining, in advanced space weaponry, in robotics. And they're catching up at a delirious pace in the AI race, despite export controls. That was vexing, by the way, to Gina Raimondo in the Biden administration even. And Trump understands that all of this combined is an existential threat to the United States.
Become a rich country because of people, again, that were in the White House that allowed this to happen. Hundreds of billions of dollars a year they'd make on us on trade, and it shouldn't be that way. And we're going to have one shot at this, and no other president's going to do this, what I'm doing. And I'll tell you what, it's an honor to do it because we have been just destroyed. What they've done to our system, if we can make a really fair deal and a good deal for the United States, not a good deal for others. This is America first. It's now America first.
We have one shot at this, he said. That's the banner. That's it. Well, in other words, our manufacturing, our middle class, especially non-college educated Americans, are getting clobbered. They have been getting clobbered. Because as we become more reliant on foreign-made goods, we sell less and less to those countries. Factories close, and American communities are flattened. Like what happened when 1,200 workers were laid off when the Belvedere assembly plant was shut down in Illinois. The manufacturing moved to Mexico.
You don't know how much you love going to work until you can't go there anymore.
This is my home. And when they told me that we were done, it hurt.
We've got a community of 24,000 people, and there's probably not a street you can go down that somebody's not tied to this plant. We've been here since 1965. It's a good job, provides a great living, and we would just like to see it come back.
Heartbreaking. Now, the good news is that plant is actually expected to reopen in 2027, and a lot of those laid-off workers will be coming back. Got a huge amount of publicity when that happened. But millions of Americans will never be that lucky. Now, remember, when other countries run surpluses, they have more cash over time to buy up assets, including a lot of our assets. That's why Nippon Steel is trying to buy U.S. steel. Trump's taking another look at that, as he should. And it's why Chrysler is now owned by foreigners. And it's why China has bought up much of our land, including farmland and our food companies. Unfortunately, though, we have a lot of elected officials, some of them Republicans, who still think greed is good wherever it manifests itself and however it manifests itself. And they don't understand that Trump's tariffs are not arbitrary. They didn't come out of thin air. They come after decades of deliberate actions by foreign governments to put U.S. companies and U.S. markets at a disadvantage. Now, this poor Senator Tina Smith from Minnesota, she was at a hearing on Capitol Hill today, and she didn't know which end was up on the trade issue. So Trump's U.S. trade representative, Jamieson Greer, tried to explain to her how trade actually works.
This formula that the administration used to assign this so-called reciprocal tariff just seems so arbitrary. I mean, where did that formula come from?
It's straightforward and it's common sense. It came from White House economists, and they proposed that looking at a country's trade deficit is a good approximation of the net effect of the unfairness of the higher tariff rates, the higher trade barriers, the unfair trade practices, the dumping, the subsidies, all of that. And that's how you can capture that.
She kept gesticulating and was very confused in this hearing. Now, if these elected officials don't know the basic facts already on trade, they should go into a different line of work, frankly. And as for the GOP senators hitting Trump's plan, or the Trump advisors throwing darts, look, you can do whatever they want. It's obviously their choice, and there's disagreements on these issues. That's fine. But I might start worrying when you're being praised by the Never Trump crowd, as you were today. The bottom line, you can only save capitalism if our middle class continues to buy into capitalism. But if year after year, they're told, well, you got to sacrifice more, you got to work harder, get another job for less of a return, then why shouldn't they just start voting with the party that's going to give them the most freebies? Where's that going to leave the Republican Party? And if the answer for the middle class is prepare to have your way of life destroyed because some Uyghur slave can make a product for pennies on the dollar in China, or some poor Malaysian worker can assemble the solar panels for $3 an hour, then we shouldn't expect this system, the system that we've gotten used to, our capitalist system, we shouldn't expect it's going to be around for much longer anyway. And who wants that? And that's the angle.
And welcome to Hannity. And tonight we are back in the D.C. swamp, broadcasting live from inside the U.S. Capitol building, where in just a moment we're going to be joined by Senator Ted Cruz, Senator Tom Cotton, Senator Kennedy, Senator Britt, Senator Graham, Senator Scott, Senator Mark Wayne Mullen, the Majority Leader himself, John Thune, for a very special Senate town hall. And we begin tonight with one word. Maybe you've heard of it, maybe you haven't. Reconciliation. I'm going to spare you the boring, gritty details of what is a rather arcane, budgetary, but really, really important procedure. But just know that the senators here in this room can, in fact, pass certain spending and revenue bills with a simple 51-vote majority. No filibuster-proof supermajorities needed. Now, this could play a significant role in giving Tom Homan the tools that he would need to secure our border. That would mean new miles of border wall. That would mean expanded ICE capabilities, additional Border Patrol agents, the ability to expedite deportations on a large scale. You know, we have known terrorists, murderers, rapists, cartel members, and gang members in our country that need to be sent home. Now, this could also be used to make President Trump's tax cuts permanent. Otherwise, it's going to be a $4 trillion tax increase on you, the American people. He can also implement no tax on tips or overtime or Social Security, and even implement certain changes recommended by DOJ. That'll eliminate hundreds of billions in waste, fraud, abuse, and corruption inside of our federal government. And of course, reconciliation might ultimately play a role in President Trump's reciprocal tariff strategy. There is a little disagreement on that issue tonight. We'll get into it. Now, tonight, for the first time in decades, we do have a president that is willing and ready and able to stand up for American industry, for the working men and women that truly do make our country great and our interests around the globe. No amount of hysteria, no amount of fear-mongering is going to shake the president's resolve. As Caroline Leavitt very articulately mentioned today, President Trump does have a spine of steel. Take a look.
On the other hand, countries like China, who have chosen to retaliate and try to double down on their mistreatment of American workers, are making a mistake. President Trump has a spine of steel, and he will not break, and America will not break under his leadership. He is guided by a firm belief that America must be able to produce essential goods for our own people and export them to the rest of the world.
Now tonight, President Trump's strategy seems to be paying off. Around 70 countries are in talks with the White House to reduce or eliminate tariffs against American goods. So far, Israel, Vietnam, Zimbabwe, Taiwan, they have all vowed to end all tariffs against American-made goods. Meanwhile, the European Union, they have now offered to remove all industrial tariffs. Britain's Prime Minister publicly admitting that globalization is over and now working with the White House on a bilateral free and fair trade deal. Also, Japan, South Korea, they are already sending a team to Washington, D.C., right here, to hammer out their own deal. American products are about to get even more competitive on the world stage. And while major multinational companies like Nissan and Honda and Apple, along with so many other countries and companies, they're now pledging, as of now, to invest already an estimated $7 trillion in manufacturing plants and other businesses and ventures right here in the U.S. Now, this is what it looks like when you do have a president who, number one, keeps his promises, is willing to fight. But, of course, not everybody's happy, especially the communist Chinese. They're not happy. For decades, they have benefited from a massive trade imbalance with the U.S. They have been hostile to our friends and allies around the world. They have stolen untold hundreds of billions of dollars in intellectual property theft, and they are also the most guilty of currency manipulation, high tariffs on U.S. goods, and our partnership with China has been a one-way street. The president, he has sent a very clear, unambiguous message. This is going to end. We send them trillions of dollars. They send us a lot of junk, often made in sweatshops. And let's not forget about COVID-19, shall we? Now, their retaliatory tariffs, they are hollow in every way. China, like the rest of the world, and we need to all understand this, they desperately want and need access to American markets. They want your money. Most American goods have already been blocked in some way from getting into China. But the 104% tariff that Donald Trump will impose at midnight tonight, well, that could wreck China's already fragile economy. The president knows leverage, but will he get the backing? Will he get the support of the U.S. Senate? Will he get the 51 votes needed for reconciliation? It's obviously easier said than done, especially there are senators, I won't mention names, that kind of have contempt for President Trump. They want to be opposition voices, and they don't really understand how profound and deep this moment is. Anyway, we'll see over time what happens with some of these other senators. So the road ahead is not going to be easy, but so far, Senate leadership, they have done an amazing job. They have stuck together. They have navigated challenge after challenge. They got the president's cabinet through.
Remember that giant sucking sound?
We have got to stop sending jobs overseas. To those of you in the audience who are business people, pretty simple. If you're paying $12, $13, $14 an hour for factory workers, and you can move your factory south of the border, pay $1 an hour for labor, have no health care, that's the most expensive single element in making a car, have no environmental controls, no pollution controls, and no retirement, and you don't care about anything but making money, there will be a giant sucking sound going south.
They called Ross Perot crazy, but after 30 years, they call him right. Bubba was wrong. He signed NAFTA, and the giant sucking sound came from the South. And then he signed the China deal, and the giant sucking sound came from the East. There were a lot of sucking sounds in the 90s, and Chuck was fed up.
We are fed up, Mr. President. The Chinese should play by the rules once and for all. But how can we stand by as millions of American workers lose their jobs, as thousands of American companies can't compete fairly? No one seeks political advantage. What we seek, rather, is fairness. Fairness in trade.
The party that represented workers, the Democrats, immediately recognized the giant sucking sound was bad for workers, but good for donors. Wall Street got rich off the giant sucking sound, and so did Pelosi, Hillary, Kerry, Gore, all of them. So they talked about it to win votes, but didn't do anything about it, and turned China into a monster, their monster.
I worked in a factory, went to factory in 1989. We made radial passenger tires for cars. I worked there with my dad, 8 of my uncles, and 12 of my cousins. I was a union steward there. That plant now sits in China because you can import small radial passenger tires pretty cheap because of our failed trade policy in this Democrats' opinion.
Detroit, Pittsburgh, Cleveland, St. Louis, Milwaukee. I could go on and on. They traded jobs and honor for cheap phones and TV screens. Trump's declaring an end to the giant sucking sound and decided to slay the monster.
Countries like China, who have chosen to retaliate and try to double down on their mistreatment of American workers, are making a mistake. President Trump has a spine of steel, and he will not break. And America will not break under his leadership. When America is punched, he punches back harder. That's why there will be 104% tariffs going into effect on China tonight at midnight.
So when the clock strikes midnight tonight, the battle begins. China will be hit with triple-digit tariffs. The export menace should have never retaliated. Trump believes he has the cards and likes his chances.
Trump has maximum negotiating leverage right here, right now. And I think it would be a mistake for anyone to think otherwise. I think it was a big mistake, this Chinese escalation. If you look at the history of the trade negotiations, we are the deficit country. So what do we lose by the Chinese raising tariffs on us? We export 1/5 to them of what they export to us. So that is a losing hand for them.
China had a plan. Dump cheap goods into the rest of the world, use the money to build their military, and pass the U.S. as the world's top superpower. But if China can't dump cheap goods here, and we're the world's biggest market, they have nowhere else to sell. They can't sell to Europe. They don't have the consumer power. And they can't sell to themselves because their birth rate's cratered. And once China can't sell, they have to lay off their workers. And the communists don't want a billion angry unemployed Chinese. That's how regimes get toppled. But we have to let Xi Jinping lose face gracefully. A quick, violent death makes us collateral damage. So we have to lower the Chinese casket into the ground diplomatically. While Trump's taxing Chinese products, he's kicking them out of the hemisphere. Pistol Pete's down at the Panama Canal today, flexing the Monroe Doctrine.
The United States of America will not allow communist China or any other country to threaten the canal's operation or integrity. I want to be very clear. China did not build this canal. China does not operate this canal. And China will not weaponize this canal.
China bribed the Bidens, but boy, did they pick the wrong horse. Trump knocked the big guy out, and now he's wrestling their precious TikTok away. And Beijing's on its heels. Breaking China also guts Russia. The Chinese can't fill Putin's shaky economy. So now that Trump's engineered oil down to $60 a barrel, Putin's war machine's going to take a hit. Russia's influence in the Mideast is weaker than ever. Their proxy in Syria got picked off, and their other proxy, Iran, as we speak, is surrounded by 2 U.S. aircraft carriers, the USS Truman and the Vincent. Oh, and we have B-2 bombers waiting at Diego Garcia in the Indian Ocean, while Trump's chief negotiator, Steve Witkoff, starts bargaining with the mullahs. Now, if they knock off their nuke program, we can bring Iranian oil back online and drive the energy prices down even lower. That'll hurt Putin, bring rates down, and take the edge off any inflation that the trade war triggers. And Europe knows where its bread's buttered. They can't afford their socialist welfare states without the American security blanket. And we're not going to give them that little blanket if they don't drop their tariffs. And they just said they're willing to go down to 0 tariffs. And if they kill their VAT tax and sprinkle in Greenland, we could have a deal. America dominating the Arctic is necessary for international security. And world peace costs money, which is why we need Ukrainian minerals. Who else does the world want on top? Us or China? Trump's logic is that China doesn't have the cards, and they're bluffing. China wants to make a deal badly, but they don't know how to get it started. We're waiting for their call. It will happen. And China can't afford to play the long game here because the rest of Asia is racing to negotiate with us. The Chi-Coms are isolated, and they know it.
President Trump made it very clear that the era of American economic surrender is over. President Trump is no longer going to allow American workers and companies to be ripped off at the hands of foolish trade practices that shipped away millions of high-paying jobs and hollowed out communities across the country.
Trump could go to China like Nixon did and rewire the world all over again. Give Xi a soft landing, let him put out domestic propaganda like he won, who cares? Now, I don't know if any of this is going to happen or how it's going to end or when it's going to end. But I know every phone at the White House is ringing.
We're managing a massive number of requests for negotiations. It's actually logistically quite challenging just to go through them. It's something that I've been spending a lot of the time this morning doing, because at NSC and NEC, what we have to do is prioritize the meetings for the president. And there are so many to go through that, we're actually getting ready to present a plan for him on, who and when.
The White House is having to put world leaders on hold. Excuse me, Prime Minister, I have the Chancellor on the other line. What's a good time to call you back? Hungary is actually going around the EU's back and trying to cut a one-on-one deal with us. I didn't even know you were allowed to do that. Ursula's going to be fuming. The Philippines, Cambodia, Thailand, they're all ready to slash tariffs. But Trump's not just handing out deals willy-nilly.
We're taking in almost $2 billion a day in tariffs. $2 billion a day. And we're doing very well. And we're doing very well in making, I call them tailored deals, not off the rack. These are tailored, highly tailored deals. Right now, Japan is flying here to make a deal. South Korea is flying here to make a deal, and others are flying here.
Trump says his call with South Korea went great today. Aside from dropping tariffs, Seoul is ready to invest here and buy American. American companies are investing here, too.
Ford is America's #1 auto manufacturer, and we assemble more U.S. vehicles and we employ more U.S. hourly auto workers than any other OEM. And we want to do more, not less, here in the U.S. 80% of what we sell in the U.S. is assembled right here in the United States. And it would be helpful to have certain parts here in the U.S., and the White House gets that.
If Trump can pull this off, and we hope he does, he'll go down as one of the greatest presidents in history. Maybe it's because he got shot. Maybe it's because he nearly went to prison. Or maybe it's his age, or maybe taking 4 years off and coming back on the job. You got a fresh head. But he's going for broke, and he knows how to use power.
He ain't no lame duck. If anything, he's a soaring eagle. Get this. 86% of the American public believes that Trump's approach to presidential power is completely different from past presidents. You can agree or you can disagree with Donald Trump, but what you can't disagree with is that he's doing things very differently. I have used the Frank Sinatra quote before. He is doing it, quote unquote, my way.
Critics on the right and the left agree with the president's goals. Return the country to an industrial superpower for the modern era. But they disagree on tactics. Trump says this kind of shock therapy was necessary. It's the only way to bring the patient back to life. And it scares the rest of the world into submission. You can't slow roll it. It'll never get done, because the next thing you know, here come the midterms. He's not tinkering around the edges. He's breaking it and putting it back together. And we pray we never hear that giant sucking sound again.
You're going to wake Brit Hume. Happy Tuesday, everyone. Yeah, so yesterday was National Beer Day, which means today is How Do I Get Lizzo Out of My Bed Day. Let's use a new picture, huh? The Supreme Court has cleared the way for Venezuelan deportations to resume. Now, how will the squad get laid? Meanwhile, J.D. Vance hosted his mom at the White House to celebrate her 10 years of sobriety. I'll drink to that, said one woman. Donald Trump met with the world champion Los Angeles Dodgers at the White House. where Trump used the opportunity to deport Shohei Ohtani. I don't even know if I said that right.
Pretty good enough.
As countries rush to deal with Trump's new tariff plan, President Trump had a phone call with Japan's prime minister, who's sending a top team to negotiate. I wonder who they could be. Many Americans are now choosing their physicians based on politics, and ditto for their embalmers. According to a new book, Kamala Harris was completely shocked by her election night loss to Donald Trump. It reminded her of 3 years earlier when she was shocked to find out she was black. What? Paramount has dropped the trailer for Mission Impossible: Final Reckoning. In this franchise finale, the 62-year-old Tom Cruise takes on his toughest assignment, finding the nearest men's room. And finally, an Alaska zoo is using their grizzlies to see if a brand of trash bins is bear resistant. But they're quick to add that the containers should be further tested against truly ravenous beasts. Empathy. Everybody thinks they have it. For example, you're probably sitting there right now imagining how it feels to be me. Successful, handsome, glutes like coiled steel. But studies have shown that conservatives are very familiar with what liberals think and believe, but liberals neither know nor care about our feelings and opinions. For instance, I feel terrible for Paul Pelosi for having to have sex with his wife. So it's no surprise that a new study suggests that conservatives are also more empathetic than liberals. According to SciPost, participants consistently showed lower empathy for political outgroup members than for in-group or neutral targets. Liberals exhibited significantly less empathy for conservatives than conservatives showed for libs. In other words, libs were empathetic, but only towards other libs. If a conservative was inconvenienced or in pain, the libs didn't care. Now, I'm sure there are a few liberals out there watching thinking, this is a bunch of crap. I'm very empathetic. After all, I'm not some fascist. And when I get in power, I'll put anyone who disagrees with me in camps. So for the libs, here's a little challenge for you. Let me throw out a name, Brian Thompson. Does that trigger any empathy? No. All right, how about this name, Luigi Mangione? Yeah, you know that guy, don't you? You've probably written him fan mail. And those nudes he got from Taylor Lorenz were probably worse than the death penalty. Why do you know and love Luigi so much? Well, for allegedly murdering a man named Brian Thompson, CEO of United Healthcare, a symbol of the evil healthcare industry, which I thought Obama fixed with the Affordable Care Act. The biggest misnomer since Leah Thomas. But Brian Thompson isn't part of your tribe, so that gives you permission to dehumanize him. Meanwhile, as libs congratulate themselves on their empathy, a new study finds that 55% of leftists agree that killing Donald Trump would be justifiable. I'm really surprised by your reaction. Apparently, this assassination culture isn't just rising among the left, but it's becoming acceptable. Take a look at the left's current battalion wreaking havoc on Tesla dealerships and ramping up violent rhetoric against Musk. But if a group of people are incapable of empathy, it's no shock that they'd be capable of savagery. The scariest people are those who believe your suffering is part of their greater good. They're the ones who end up part of larger acts of brutality, whether it's following BLM, Antifa, Charles Manson, Joseph Stalin, or the king of the lizard people. And they attract people to these resentment-driven causes because it alleviates their own personal sense of meaninglessness. If life is an empty bucket, it's just easier to fill it with rage than hard work. Rather than fix the root cause of their unhappiness, they pawn it off on anyone who might oppose their warped worldview. If you didn't wear a useless mask during the pandemic, they openly wished you dead. They marched on behalf of Hamas, a terror group that recently butchered 1,000 Jews. And if you own a Tesla in 2025, suddenly you're evil, even if you voted for Kamala. I guess it wasn't about the environment after all. So not only are they violent, but they're full of on top of it. Now, There are dozens of examples, but this show's only an hour. But to libs, it's all okay because they see themselves as the good guys. But that's like Whoopi looking in the mirror and seeing Halle Berry. Underneath it all is a profound distortion of what it means to be human. They erased the lines between personal and political. Suddenly wearing a red hat meant you could be hunted. Meanwhile, they made who you slept with a moral virtue and the color of your skin a marker of superior righteousness. And that chipped away at what it meant to be really human. The human race became a club, one you had to fill out an application for. And if you don't tick the right boxes, you aren't just banned from the club, they'll come looking for you with a club. Which is all these leftists really have. Lucky for us, they can't stand the Second Amendment, since ultimately the best tool at keeping the peace is having one. Let's hear tonight's guest. He's the reason millions of Americans sleep in. Host of Fox and Friends and One Nation, Brian Kilmeade. He looks like the personal trainer who gave your wife a UTI. Comedian Jeff Dye. She talks faster than a coked-up pastor. Co-host of Outnumbered and he has a walk-in belly button. New York Times best-selling author, comedian, former NBA world champion tyrant. Brian, it must be hard for people to empathize with you.
Right. I don't know what you mean by that.
Well, you're unsympathetic.
Right.
You're lonely. You're painful. You're homely.
That's the last time I talked to you in private. And you would tell everybody all my secrets.
Do you think that whenever you ask people why they justify violence, they will always say because Trump untethered will just cause more violence. So, his suffering is worth it.
Well, it's not just Trump. I remember Bush, too. They said the same thing. Well, he's a Nazi and he's Hitler. And they said the same thing about a lot of Republicans. And I thought to myself, this study, although it does make somewhat sense, I'm sure when I research it, I will come up with a different conclusion. However, the study does hold up. Because I'm Googling now like crazy. It's this great search engine. All of you should try. First off, empathy in Democrats. Harold Ford, very mean guy.
Yes.
Very selfish, very self-centered. He is the exception. But Jimmy Kimmel, for example, says all unvaccinated people should die. Howard Stern says he hates Trump voters and says they are stupid. Alec Baldwin, supporters of Donald Trump, are responsible for the neo-moral collapse of the country, and Americans are uninformed to reality. They don't really know what's going on. That's how people label Trump supporters, and I just think that they really believe that they are dealing with half the country that's not worthy of being in their country. And I think it's a scary situation.
All that Googling for such a mediocre point.
Right. I thought I helped the show.
Yeah,
Thanks for coming on, B. Thanks for coming on.
Jeff, Brian's making a good point. But it's interesting to me that, okay, so they label us. I feel like we don't really label them. We feel bad for them because we sense that there's some kind of emptiness going on, that it's not about politics, it's something missing.
Yeah, conservatives pray for them, or we roll our eyes, or we ignore them, or we're often kind of insensitive on a tweet. Yeah. We don't want to hurt them. No one's trying to bash them or beat them up. It's very strange. You've got they think it's okay to be violent. Is the most insane thing I've ever heard in my life. Like Bill Burr's going around going, "Free Luigi," and then being like, "But I'm not political." It's like that. You say it's okay to murder, right. Or healthcare's not perfect, but you can't support murder. I think it goes back to in school. We've taught people that it's okay to we're so contrarian now that it's we teach haves and have-nots. So when they learn that, they go, kill the haves and support the have-nots. Or oppressor oppressed. Kill the oppressor, kill the oppressed. But it's so vague. We got people rooting for Dexter. Oh, well, he kills bad guys. So it's good to be a murderer. Oh, let's root for the Green Witch in Wizard of Oz because she's misunderstood. We blurred it all to where now the libs think violence is the answer.
That's an interesting point. That probably happened in the 60s with when Bonnie and Clyde, when the first anti-hero movies came out, suddenly it was okay to root for the bad guy, and then the bad guy became cool.
Right.
And now it's you know what? natural-born killers.
We do it
Movies
with
like that.
everything. We're like, oh, Larry David is selfish, and he just wants to be by himself, and he's grumpy, and he hates people. And we go, I hate people, and I'm grumpy. And you go, well, look, why are we rooting for that?
Yeah, and also
Let's root for
he's
virtue.
really rich, and you're not. So you can be grumpy all you want. You're not going to get a TV show. Emily, it's always good to see you.
Thanks.
Yes.
It's not even April Fool's.
When Jeff makes a good point. It's like generally if people on the right are religious, so if something bad, if somebody says something bad, they just go, we're going to pray for you. You know, it's like that's the reaction that you get from the one side versus the other.
In part, I think, too, the study talked about that the judgment and the blessing of violence from the left came from a place of strong moral judgment. And I feel like that it's the judgment that sits with the left, because those on the right who are praying for souls see everyone is God's children. You are worthy of value, even if I disagree with you. And remember, we've seen this reflected in all these different polls, like the ones where they say, I needed to break up with a partner because of politics. It's always lib breaking up with the conservative, or I can't have Thanksgiving dinner with my family. It's the libs saying that. All of the complete isolation or the civic condemnation came from the left, and it's all because they are superior and unable to even stand the presence because they consider it harmful and immoral. And the thing is that we've seen that reflected this entire time. Look, Kamala Harris was historic, but a Black American senator running for president, that's Uncle Tom. I mean, we saw that from the mouths of people on the left. It's hideous rhetoric that has stoked all of this violence. If from the beginning, the Democratic leadership had said, none of this is acceptable, then it would have been nipped in the bud a long time ago. But they pat themselves on the back for compassion. Well, compassion is cruel, because in their compassion, they've allowed all of the people at the border, the historic rapes and murders and the like. But the blood's on their hands. That's the difference.
You know, Tyrus, it's like... That's a lot. That'll help her sleep at night. Tyrus, it's also lazy. You don't have to get to know an issue or anything if you just label somebody.
There's no honor.
Yeah.
There's no respect among thieves, and their leadership is thieves. So every time, the difference between a conservative and a Democrat right now in this particular point in history is the conservative wants to talk about the issues and they feel they have a good grasp on things and like, well, I want to do this and I want lower taxes and this. And the other side is, we're on the wrong side of it. So the only thing we can do is the easiest thing to do is to create a monster. That's why you hear Hitler and not a counter proposal.
Yeah.
There's a reason for that. You have no argument. There's a reason. Here's the cold part for them, and the leadership knows this. When you have activists as leadership, when you have a bad pastor who all he cares about is filling the money in the plate, he's going to tell you the locusts are coming. And he's going to tell you that if you don't build the house for God and me to have this Rolex, bad going to happen. And then if something happens, well, it's not me, it's the act of God. Yeah. And they do the same thing. They make promises that they know they can't keep, and they continue to rely on the part of a part of this country who just watches, who believes the things on TV are real. When they see an actor, they think that's the guy, how he is in real life, and then they meet him and he's not that way. They have gotten the people to do the bidding for them. They all sit up there and they have this new memo came out where they said to cuss. Like Swalwell now says the F word like my kids did when they were 3. It doesn't make sense. It's funny to hear it, but there's nothing to it. And that's the problem. They don't have any substance to their arguments. So what do? They create monsters. And President Trump, they talk about him as a monster. Well, okay, President Trump has been in politics for almost 10 years now, right? About 10 years now. How many camps has he built?
Yeah.
How many people have been suicided from their homes at night? None of this has ever happened, but they continue to do it because they have a small population who will do their bidding for them.
You know what would be great for Trump is if he actually did build camps, but they're like summer camps and
Yeah, they're fun.
Yeah, just
people
fun
want to
camps.
go.
Yeah, it's like, yeah.
No, I was at Trump's camp. It's awesome.
Oh, yeah, it's fantastic.
We got golden
There's hiking,
shoes. There was
swimming. If you want to lose some weight, there's a little fat camp.
We golfed a lot.
Yes. Yeah. He should do a press conference where he goes, I am going, my executive order, I'm making camps.
Trump
and then he just dropped these huge pictures of these
awesome.
beautiful
balloons. There'll be a carnival and pony rides.
All right.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.